Welcome to Agency Acquisitions and Exits. I'm your host, Peter Lang. Today is a doozy. We welcome Daniel Hulme, Dr. Daniel Hulme, the Chief AI Officer at WPP. He created an AI consultancy, Satalia, that was acquired by WPP in 2021. We talk about his deal. We talk about AI and optimizing this behemoth, this big network, WPP. We talk about not only what he is doing to improve the organization, but where he sees the industry going as a whole. If you are sitting at your desk wondering how AI can help you or how it's going to threaten your existence, this is the episode for you. So let's dive in. Daniel, thank you for joining me.
It's a pleasure, Peter. Thank you.
So AI obviously is a hot topic, but it's been a hot topic for you before ChatGPT and these commercial grade large language models came out. So give us some background to know that this isn't just a trendy discussion around the current AI climate.
I guess for most people, AI happened about 3 years ago with ChatGPT. Yeah, I've been involved in AI for about 25 years. So my undergraduate actually was in AI at UCL, which is one of the world's leading academic institutes for this subject. I did a master's there, PhD, postdoc, all at UCL, ran a master's program in applied AI for about 4 years. So I had hundreds of students going out there applying these technologies. And then I'm currently entrepreneur in residence at UCL. So I help them spin out deep tech companies. But I did spin out a company from UCL 17 years ago that's been building AI solutions for organizations like PwC and Tesco and the BBC in anger that solve real problems that drive real value. I sold that company to WPP 3.5 years ago, despite knowing nothing about marketing. I think my expertise is understanding algorithms and how to apply the right algorithms to solving the right frictions across supply chains. All organizations have supply chains. What tends to happen is we get very excited about emerging technologies. 8 years ago, it was machine learning. Now it's generative AI. And then they apply those technologies to solving the wrong problems. And our expertise is really understanding how to apply the right algorithms to the right frictions to differentiate organizations.
How's it now that people know what it is that you do when you go to a pub?
Well, even unfortunately, people think that ChatGPT or generative AI is AI, and it's really not. There are many definitions of AI. The most popular definition, I think, is the weakest definition, which is getting computers to do things that humans can do. And I guess ChatGPT allows people to correspond in natural language, recognize objects and images, machines to do things that humans can do. And because humans are the most intelligent thing we know in the universe, we assume that that's intelligence. Now, there's enough books and material out there to help people understand that they're not that intelligent. We are bounded by about our ability to find patterns in 4 dimensions. We can solve problems up to 7. Beyond that, we're pretty useless. Benchmarking machines against humans is a very silly thing to do. There's a very nice definition that comes from the 80s, the definition of intelligence, which is goal-directed adaptive behavior. So goal-directed in our world is trying to spend your marketing money to maximize return. Behavior is how quickly I can move towards that. But the key word for me is adaptive. What you want to do is build systems that adapt themselves in production. And if I'm being honest, most systems in production don't adapt themselves. So if I held what we currently do in industry to this definition, goal-directed adaptive behavior, arguably nobody's doing AI, which is a ridiculous comment, right? Because everything is now AI. But the point that I'm making is that looking at AI through technologies, looking at AI through definitions is not helpful. So over the past 10 years, I've been developing a framework to think about AI through frictions or through applications. What are the applications of these types of algorithmic technologies that solve real problems across supply chains? And I believe there are 6 families of application. And that's what we use as a framework to identify frictions and make sure that we're applying the right algorithms.
So getting to this point where you don't know anything about marketing, weren't familiar with this. You do, though, I've heard you define it as humans use creativity to adapt to an ever-changing world. And that's one of the human advantages. And so you joined a creative organization, at least at its core, which is WP doing advertising and marketing and creative work. So how did you reconcile that alignment for you moving into such a big organization that is focused on creativity, and you're showing up and they're like, Daniel's here to take all of our jobs?
Well, first of all, we joined WP before AI happened. Okay, so and the spirit of the acquisition, there were 5 rationale for the acquisition. Satalia is actually a funny type of organization. We're actually a venture builder. The question is, can you create an organization that can bring innovations to market as fast as possible. Those innovations could be consulting, they could be services, they could be assets, they could be products, they could be open source. And most organizations, they have a business model orientated around one offering. Again, that might be products, it might be services. And if you're successful, what you end up having to do is sort of diversify your revenue stream. So if you're a product company, you become a services company. And what I wanted to do when I started Satalia was, can I create an organizational structure that allows us to be able to build innovations, no matter what type of those innovations, and get it to market as fast as possible. And so Satalia is a complex organization that has consulting, services. We'd built assets that solve problems across supply chain. We'd actually built a product, a last mile delivery product that we originally built out for Tesco, but that last mile delivery product is being used in Woolworths in Australia. We've just won several major clients here in the UK. I can't talk about them, but you wouldn't think of, first of all, WPP as being an organization that knows about last mile. So Satalia, 4 or 5 years ago, we realized that if we wanted to scale these products that we built, last mile delivery, workforce management, we needed some investment. Now, I'd managed to get away with not taking investment for 13 years. I'd scaled the company to about 120 people, but we really needed investment to scale. And when investors looked at us, they had no idea how to price us, right? What are you? What type of organization are you? Ironically, if you broke the organization up, the sum would be more than the parts. So a number of other organizations were interested in buying us, companies that we've been working with, large tech firms that saw that we could build differentiated technologies in ways that they can't, but often promise. But when WPP approached us, who we'd been working with on a number of projects with clients over the years, like one of our clients is DFS, which is one of the UK's retailers. Now, WPP run a lot of their e-commerce and infrastructure. We'd been building a lot of their supply chain. So the rationale for the acquisition was, first of all, you Satalia have a load of supply chain assets that we could augment with our marketing, right? You've got last mile delivery, middle mile delivery, warehouse management. What we can do is we can now provide end-to-end packages for our clients, not just marketing e-commerce, but the full supply chain. So that was the one reason, is a channel for these assets. The second reason was we developed a pedigree in understanding how to use AI to allocate people to work. One of the projects we built for PwC unlocked a huge amount of unbillable hours, and it was an overwhelming success. The question was, and still is, can we apply that workforce methodology to the 100 odd thousand people in WPP, unlocking more utilization? The third spirit of the acquisition was, we are good at understanding how to solve problems across supply chain. WPP has a supply chain, creating content, understanding how audiences perceive content, pushing content across channels. The fourth spirit was, WPP pretty much touch every brand in the world. Can we take AI services to those organizations and scale an AI provider? And then finally, my position as the chief AI officer, really leaning into these big questions that we're facing as a species around the safe and responsible use of AI. And when we looked at those 5 synergies, the acquisition just made perfect sense.
Yeah, it enabled you to touch places that without significant capital would be very challenging for you to get to.
Yeah, but you asked a really important question, which is, Satalia is very much a purpose-driven company. Our purpose is still the same now as it was before, which is to essentially enable a world where everybody is economically free. And WPP's purpose is to use the power of creativity to make a better future. Now, I think a better future is a world where people are economically free. And what I've realized over the past 5, 6, 7 years is that creativity is an important factor in that. If we can enhance, accelerate, enable more people to use their creativity, what people will do is they'll use their creativity to actually try and make things easier and better for other people. So I got very interested in this idea of creativity, and I believe in WPP's purpose.
Sometimes you hear people critique businesses that are having a positive social impact. They're led in mission-oriented objectives, selling to a big bureaucratic network. So maybe disprove the concern to some capacity, because you brought 100+ people into one of the largest network businesses in the world, made up of nearly 3,000 independent businesses being managed globally. What did that feel like transitioning in? Because your 5 reasons are strong rationale. But day to day, did it feel different? Was it disruptive? Was it enhancing? Describe a little bit of that.
It's a great question, actually. I think I'd like to think that this acquisition has been one of the most successful acquisitions that WPP has had. Even though we're relatively small compared to some of the other acquisitions, we're very different. They didn't just acquire an agency; they acquired an AI capability that's akin to a DeepMind. Fortunately, Mark Reed, the CEO, Efan Pretorius, the CTO, Neil Stewart, the leadership really did understand the power of AI even before generative AI. Okay, so they understood the importance of algorithms and how it could transform their business. So that buy-in from the leadership, from the COO, Andy Scott, that gave me a lot of faith that when we were going to be brought into this organization, we were going to be respected by the leadership. And by having that respect from the leadership, it percolates down. So we immediately gained the respect of many people across the organization. And that still exists now. They understand that Satalia enables them to build differentiated intelligent solutions. And that was why actually having that chief AI role was very important, because without that role, we wouldn't necessarily have also had that respect. And I wouldn't have had that role in another organization, because we would have just been buried somewhere in a basement and become code monkeys. So we proved when we joined the organization that we can grow ourselves, we can help the organization grow themselves. And then AI happened. And so they looked to us to then start to figure out, how do we build differentiated solutions? And again, I'd like to think that over the past 3 years, our AI strategy has become actually WPP strategy. And the solutions that we've been building are demonstrably better than our competition. And now the interesting challenge that WPP is going through is, how do we transition from a organization that is time and materials based to selling enterprise AI software. And so it's a very exciting transition. It's fantastic to be in an industry that's completely being upturned by AI. Satalia has been completely embraced by that organization. And I think, the organization that Mark Reed inherited from the previous CEO was, as you can imagine, an organization of fiefdoms and, people fighting and over revenues and all that kind of stuff. What Mark's done an incredible job of over the past several years is to consolidate and centralize many things that should be centralized, whilst enabling innovation still to exist on the edges. So he has gone through this tremendous transformation, changing the internal structure, the culture of the organization, probably in a way that I can't appreciate, because I only joined halfway through that transformation. I don't envy what Mark has been going through, but he's done a tremendous job.
You went from kind of being this, where we acquired something that's at this early stage of the bell curve, very innovative, not anyone's touching it, and then you have a spotlight on you. The ChatGPT comes out, consumer awareness of large language models and generative AI and AI as a whole is everywhere. Even though you had the position of chief AI officer, the general importance of the role is more significant, maybe? Is that fair? Like the attention towards you is greater?
Yeah, I think absolutely it is. And in some respects, the reason why that has happened is if you look at the sort of marketing supply chain, there are like 7 really big juicy problems you need to solve for. You need to solve for dynamic segmentation, identifying segments. You need to solve for identifying macro and micro moments that are going on around the world to build campaigns around. You need to solve for creativity. How could you get AI to help us with creativity, content creation, audience perception, synthetic audience focus groups, performance prediction, channel optimization. There are these 7 or 8 different big juicy problems. Now, before large language models, before ChatGPT and stable diffusion models, 4 of those aspects of our supply chain were the human was the bottleneck. Humans had to create content. Humans were left to do the creativity. Humans had to do the focus groups. What generative AI did is it solved or unlocked several aspects of our supply chain that now allows us to create an end-to-end marketing solution. And that end-to-end marketing solution we call WPP Open, of which 60% of the organization is using, and we're also selling it, as you probably know, to some of our largest clients. So we are going through that transition of selling enterprise AI software. And in my job, as you've alluded to, is to make sure that is differentiated. So there is pressure on me, pressure on my team to make sure that we're always at the bleeding edge or pushing the boundaries of AI in this domain.
It was well documented that the budget towards AI was also enhanced dramatically during your period of time. So when you showed up, what you had access in regards to opportunity to make changes within the organization might have been more limited than they are now, and then the budget's moved towards supporting that. How are you being responsible with kind of the attention, the budget being allotted as you continue to evolve? because I don't think change management is an appropriate description of AI's implementation on businesses. I think it's an evolution. So describe that a bit, because that responsibility is pretty significant.
Yeah, I mean, fortunately, my aspect, the thing that I look after is the intelligence layer. There's data, and there's a huge amount of energy investment involved in consolidating and differentiating our data offering compared to some of our competitors. There are studios that we're building, so applications that we're building that enable people to do different parts of the marketing process, and then now agents are being developed across the BBP. So I think we're now investing 300 million annually into AI and technology. That I was going to say the money's come easy. It's fortunately the board understand and can see the direction of travel in terms of this industry. I think we've got the right strategy, and we now need the investment to go and execute on that strategy. So from what I've seen and experienced over the past several years, there's been no barriers to unlocking that capital. I think we've got the right strategy. We've got the right rationale around that strategy. We just need to execute quickly. And so that money has come. Of course, having more money will help us execute more quickly, but we've got the right balance at the moment. I think we're winning the market.
Is it more of a response to turbulent times, like the fear of disruption and the lack of innovation disrupting the business? Or is it a positive aspiration for this new model? Or is it a blend?
I think it's a blend. I think that, what was exciting was that when AI happened, several years ago, we'd already had open our platform underway in development. But what happened is that many of our creatives went out there starting using these technologies, and what that did is it was a catalyst for us to accelerate people being brought to a platform where we can govern and manage the use of these technologies. So people weren't using large language models that potentially were creating, copyright violations and things like that. So on the one hand, there was a pull from the organization saying we want to use these technologies. We think that they can help us improve our work, improve the experience and output for our customers, and we've proven that. I guess there's a fear in terms of if we don't adopt these technologies, then some of our competitors will. But it's primarily come from, we know that there are obvious places across our supply chain that the AI can help with. Let's just accelerate in getting them built. The faster we build them, the more likely we are to win. So I think it's pretty much come from a positive place.
If you were to go back in time and give yourself a coaching lesson right before you accepted the term sheet and the deal, do you think the business would be more valuable today if was acquired, or do you think you got in at a good time and brought in the right partner?
I think that I think it was Martin Sorrell that invented the earnout. Maybe that's not true, but I was on earnout. I got paid a chunk of money initially for Satalia, and like any entrepreneur, they always think that their company is worth more than what other people think. And the nice thing about an earnout in one respect is it gives you the chance to prove it. If you can prove that you are going to grow in the way that you think you're going to grow, then it will unlock more capital. So it's a win-win. And I think we have proven that. We have executed the earnout the earliest it can be. I think we've pretty much hit the top of the earnout, so that's all still being audited and all that kind of stuff. But it's been a tremendously successful acquisition from an earnout perspective. I know there are many earnouts that don't go well. Ours seemingly has gone extremely well, and I think that's a good mechanism. I think that at the time, based on what people knew, I think it was a fair value for the organization. And if it was a few years later, then maybe it would have been a different discussion. But I think it's fair. And the reality is that I've joined an organization that I believe in. That I believe in their purpose. They've enabled me to grow my organization, Satalia, over the past several years. That would almost triple in size. Our impact is huge. They've also, I don't know how much you know, but they've also allowed me to sort of create a spin out of WPP to solve machine consciousness and explore some of these really crazy ideas. So they give me a huge amount of respect and rope, and I don't think I could have asked that from anywhere else.
That's called incentive not to leave after the earnout.
I don't know. I think in an organization, like any organization that's big, and all organizations are bureaucratic, right? It's unavoidable, and it's up to you how to use the best bits and leverage the positives, and how to navigate some of the challenges. And the organizations like WPP and I suspect any organization, it's really not down to them. It's down to you to learn how to navigate and get the best out of it. So I don't like it when that we see people leave and blame that I don't know, that the organization has took over our HR department or all that kind of stuff. That was it within their gift, and to have that conversation, to understand the impact of their business. I think that if you play your cards right, if you are smart about how you leverage the benefits, then it'll be a success.
Transactions, there's integration. Integration is an M&A form of change management. How are you participating in that, both from the current infrastructure that exists within WPP, so going in and dealing with all these isolated P&Ls and brands and trying to help them in ways that could be seen counterintuitive to their survival, and then for new opportunities, have you been pulled in to say, well, if AI optimization and change management is a key core competency of WPP, we can evaluate assets on the marketplace and have a significant gain post-close?
Yeah.
So describe that a little bit for us.
Exactly. I guess there are first of all, when you're on an earn out, there tends to be not a lot of interference. You could argue, well, you've made me move to Microsoft instead of Google, and therefore you've hampered my ability to hit my numbers or whatever, right? So what happens during the earn-out process, it tend to be very, very light touch. That said, we had actually integrated quite a lot into WPP because we saw the benefit of that integration to benefit Satalia. But broadly, there are, I guess, there are three areas that we're applying AI to. One is the front office, so that open and differentiated marketing solutions. There's back office. There's hiring and onboarding and expenses and all that stuff, and then there's resource management. How do I allocate my resources to these different opportunities? I've primarily focused on front office over the past several years, but what agents are unlocking is the ability to really transform how organizations operate in terms of their people and their back office. So what I'm excited about my next phase in WPP is turning my attention internally to help unlock much more utilization, effectiveness from our employee base. So I'm really interested in actually reinventing back office processes, not just making them more efficient, but making them more effective, and using WPP as a playground to explore these new ways of working.
How definitive is the board or the executives trying to get you to be around the future optimizations, and what's the impact going to be? Are they trying to say, are you replacing a third of the workforce with agents? Are you enhancing it so we can do more with the people we have? And then if so, are you then giving them a specific spreadsheet, or is the model helping you or the AI helping you derive some type of future conclusions so they can set expectations on the business? Like, how do you translate into the things that are important for the business and the executives and the stakeholders?
Yeah, if I'm honest, it's very much an agile approach. Like, I could write a business plan that would outline something that could happen over the next 3 years.
It'd be wrong, which would be great.
The reality is that it's very unlikely that it's going to go that way. So what I really like about how I work with the leadership team is it's very adaptable. We discuss what the priorities are over the next quarter, and as new models come out, there might be a model that comes out soon that does creativity better than human beings. I doubt it, but let's say it does. What impact now will that have on our workforce? We believe that AI is an enhancer, an accelerator of creativity, and actually we believe that if you solve end-to-end marketing using AI, then perhaps the only differentiator is human creativity, is getting humans to come up with crazy ideas that differentiate one brand over another. But we apply very much an agile approach, and so I'm not sort of hampered to numbers and spreadsheets. I think they trust that me and my team are applying our smarts to the right priorities at the time, and they know that we're adaptable and that if we need to change, we can. As I said before, agents are transformational to not just WPP, but any organization. And so we're going, all in on agents. And, my rhetoric around this is that agents need to have the intelligence, the capability to do their job. What you're going to see over the coming years is that organizations will deploy agents across their organization that are not fit for purpose. Fortunately, there's not many organizations out there that have a DeepMind, a Satalia, and so we are good at building agents that are differentiated. So that for me is quite exciting. But I guess to answer your question, I think my job in some respects is to not be surprised by these things that are coming out from our partners. My job is not to be surprised by the future, because it's to understand and to make sure that we're skating to where the future is. And so far, I think my track record has been right, and again, they respect me for that.
Do you find any resistance? So there's fear in the creative industry, and I tend to say that you're asking an industry about its survival while it has a gun to its head. And so it should be optimistic about its survival. And they don't really understand the gun. They don't understand the risk because it's so unknown. And what history has taught us, even Sam's Altman's view of the world, the most optimistic and ambitious we think a technology is going to be, it ends up being beyond that. So how do you traverse that type of friction within the organization where you're seen as a change management disruptive mechanism in some respect?
Satalia has been building solutions that transform organizations for 17 years. So we know how to take stakeholders from every level on that journey. I've been in warehouses at 5 a.m. in the morning talking to delivery drivers to help them understand how time windows affect their routes. So we know how to take an organization on that journey. I think the reality is that people are optimistic about the next several years. We're optimistic about using these technologies to free people from mundane, repetitive tasks, enabling them to do the things that they want. I think beyond 5 years, nobody knows what they're talking about. And the way that I talk about AI and agents inside WPP is that 7 years ago, large language models were a bit like toddlers. They sort of regurgitated some words that sort of sometimes made sense. Arguably, ChatGPT 3 years ago was like educated graduate. It would confidently, spout out things that were 50% incorrect. And what we're seeing is that intoxicated graduating to like a master's level, so be able to do reasoning. We think that, this year they'll graduate to a PhD level where you're going to be a complex problem and then solve that problem 18 months later, be able to do science. And by the end of this decade, we'll probably have a professor in our pocket. Now, my job is to figure out how do we leverage, assuming that trajectory is correct, how do we make sure that we leverage those technologies at the right time, at the right place across our supply chain. And then, by the way, even a professor in your pocket can't solve a media plan, right? A professor would need to use an algorithm that optimizes a media plan, or he would have to build an algorithm that optimizes a media plan. So these technologies are not a panacea, and that's why it's really important to understand there are other algorithmic technologies out there that are important to our industry beyond large language models. And again, that's my responsibility to making sure we're placing the right bets.
In the vein of placing the right bets, you went through an acquisition. BPP is the poster child of acquisitions. And when you're describing the future as hard to anticipate the industry beyond 5 years, hard to define it, it's hard to make investments in businesses when you don't have longer than a 5-year horizon on that business. So how do you think the organization is approaching that uncertainty in its allocation of capital, in its acquisitions, or in its market expansion? And you really can't see what's on the horizon.
I see. Well, arguably, if you can't see beyond the horizon, you don't know. You don't know how to plan for that. I guess it's sort of called a singularity. There are three aspects of the business that we're betting on in terms of AI. One is core productivity. So how can we accelerate adopting AI across writing faster emails and PowerPoint slides and all that kind of stuff? But that's not going to differentiate your business. What it will do, it will unlock core productivity. The second is how do we accelerate our digital transformation by investing in AI that differentiates open, that shows that open is better than other marketing solutions out there. One thing that, Mark did ask several years ago was, if we were to start from scratch, if we were creating an agency from scratch, knowing everything we know about AI now and how it's going to play out, what would that agency look like? And so this isn't a secret, but what we're doing is we're collapsing all of the knowledge that we have across marketing, using our data and all that kind of stuff, into a single platform. And that platform is going to be targeting the SME market. There are, if you look at enterprise software and startups, there's been a history where enterprise software, the incumbent, ultimately gets superseded by what was initially a small startup solving a small problem, but eventually growing and eating that enterprise. And so we are launching an SME offering as both an offensive play and a defensive play. So offensive, what it does, it allows us to capitalize and unlock revenues from a long tail, which we've never been able to look at before. So small companies, but a defensive play because we want to compete with other startups that are out there that are offering, solutions that might do, content creation or focus groups. We know we can do it better because we have access to data and all that expertise that often startups don't. So that's our sort of disruptive play. Core productivity, incremental acceleration of our digital transformation, and then a disruptive solution as well.
I mean, WPP has been the hunted, so this sounds like a way to become hunters again. to keep up with the ever-changing climate. But still, I'm trying to imagine this on a global scale because WPP has a presence in all over the world. And so the localization of this effort has to be taken into account. The markets, from an international business perspective, how is that being influenced? Because there's different regulations, compliances, regions are defending themselves, America currently, in interesting ways. So how is the international consideration playing a role?
Well, first of all, I think having the scale of WPP is a benefit, but also, as you've alluded to, it can be challenging because you have to navigate those complexities. Fortunately, we've got, I believe, an incredible legal counsel team that we've been working with them for many years on AI and its impact on the industry, and I believe they are pioneering in this. And I don't now have visibility to all the other aspects of what they do, but I trust that they are on top of this. And fortunately, that's where AI is really helpful. AI can help you understand nuances between different jurisdictions. And, when we're thinking about applying AI to back office processes, actually legal is one of those areas ripe for the application of AI.
I just hear that as everyone in the WPP executive room is scared of you, Daniel.
Not at all. It's been, I'm probably one of the least
now it's
scary
time
people.
for the legal department. How many contracts are you working on?
No, I mean they really are crying out for for AIs that are able to help them do ad claims or compliance claims or food compliance claims or sustainability claims. So historically, that's a manual process that can be done now largely with AI.
How important is it for organizations to take the proprietary direction with AI? So building their own, making sure that they're treating their information with the right level of security. You're doing that within WPP. How are you helping organizations understand that?
Yeah, I mean, that's Satalia's bread and butter. As I said earlier, what happens is that people get very excited about emerging technologies, and they'd say, okay, we're going to do this ourselves. We're going to hire our own data science team. We're going to buy some sort of analytics tool, whatever. And the reality is that team won't exist in 3 years' time. And so what's happening at the moment is people are now trying to build their own marketing solutions. They're being encouraged to do that by tech consultancies that are spending they're reaping in lots of revenues to encourage organizations to build solutions that ultimately are probably not going to be sustainable in the next 3 years. I always encourage clients or organizations to ask or answer two questions. One, have you ever built and deployed scalable AI software inside your organization? And if the answer is no, then you're not going to do it with AI unless it's core to your business. The second is the second question I ask people is, do you have differentiated AI talent? If you don't have differentiated AI talent, you're probably not going to build differentiated AI solutions. And so I know there's lots of people that have rebranded themselves as AI experts over the past 3 years, but if you really want to build differentiated AI solutions, you need people that have been doing this for 2-3 decades. There are not many Google DeepMinds on the market. I think we were very fortunate that we got acquired at the time. I think WPP are very fortunate they acquired a DeepMind-esque organization at the time, which has the ability to help them build differentiated AI solutions. But if you can't attract that talent, then you need to be able to engage with organizations that have that talent, that can bring that talent to you. And that's what Satalia used to do. Satalia used to, and still does actually, we augment existing AI teams with bleeding edge knowledge about algorithms to help them build differentiated solutions. So first of all, don't try and build stuff yourself that isn't core to your business. And second, ask yourself honestly, do you have access to the talent to help you differentiate?
Double tapping on the talent component. Because unless you've been in it for 2 decades, you're not at the same level of capability, is what I hear, to deploy the type of change that organizations need. If there's a lot of agencies who are becoming AI as a facade or using technology, what's your message to the workforce to become that talent in a way that can actually contribute? And then next to the agencies, those digital ones who are trying to keep up, but didn't have the academic or the tenure within the industry.
So again, it's hard to develop 10 years of talent without having 10 years in front of you to kind of build those expertise. But my advice to people in any industry is get stuck into using AI and figure out how it can make you supercharge your ability to do your job. You don't have to become an AI expert to use AI. You can be an expert user of AI. In fact, I'm a terrible user of AI. I can't write a prompt to save my life. but I can build AI solutions. So that's the first thing. Sorry, just remind me of the question because I had a second point that I was going
Well,
to.
then the agencies. So a lot of digital agencies are supplementing with AI consultancies and AI services, and agent deployment on behalf of. There's just the natural evolution of technology services in many
Yeah,
respects.
I don't I don't know the future of agencies that are not going to be able to attract talent, and my worry is that they're going to think they're attracting some talent that actually aren't. So I can't comment on how the survival of other agencies, small or large. What I do know and have confidence is I think that WPP has the right strategy and we have the right talent. So I'm very confident about that. I guess the other thing that's quite interesting is data. I mean, if you have data that has insights that are more useful than your competition, then you have an advantage. You either need to make that data available commercially, or you need to again use AI talent, deep AI talent, to unlock those insights to be able to differentiate you from your competitors. What I think is exciting for me with my kind of science background is that I think that marketing can become much more objective. There are benchmarks for creativity. There are ways that we could objectively show that this WPP Open is better at doing performance prediction than something else. We can actually run trials and compare objectively what is the best solution rather than being told a story and taking somebody's word for it. And so that's what I'm quite excited about. And where we are objectively not better, then it's my job to figure out how do we differentiate in that world.
And the impact on entry level roles at WPP or another in the agency sector as a whole, there's a lot of concern. Like the academic infrastructure that's leading to all these entry level roles is not really empowering them to be productive early in their careers. What's your thoughts on that dynamic?
We have a fantastic internship program, creative apprenticeship program that I'm actually super proud of, even though I'm not actually part of the inception of it, and I go and do kind of talks for. But we have diverse groups of new starters that are AI like literate. We're teaching them how to utilize these technologies to do incredibly creative things. They're better than me at using these technologies, and coupling that tool set with their creative thinking has been remarkable. You'll have probably heard Mark Reed talk about some of the outputs from that group. So I'm really proud about that. I'm really proud about the training that we do across WPP. And so I think you can be creative no matter who you are, and what age you are, and what level. And what I'm excited about is being able to give those people, whatever level you are, the tools to be able to enhance and accelerate that creativity. Because I do think that is going to be the key differentiator.
When it comes to like the next generation, the kids side of things, it wasn't too long ago we were telling kids to learn to code. We had grandparents like, hey, learn to code. Next stage of your life, you can be a programmer, and now that's being wiped out for many respects. What's the skill sets you think the youth need to really hone in on to enhance creativity in this technology-enabled world?
Great question. And I think I probably have two answers to this. One is developing an engineering mindset, the ability to orchestrate complex systems. Now, that could be people, it could be AIs, but not just understanding how to design a system that has a happy path, but understanding what are the failure points, how do I mitigate those failure points before they happen. So being able to architect and orchestrate complex systems, I think is a good skill set to develop. And I think that is an engineering mindset. The faster you can build innovations that work and get them out to market, the more intelligent you are. The faster you can innovate, the more adaptive you are, the more intelligent you are. The second is actually what we found with some of our creatives, is that those creatives that have like art history degrees or understand about anthropology or photography, so lighting, aperture, camera angles, they're able to make reference to some artistic style in some tribe 10,000 years ago that none of us would have known about, but the AI knows about because it's been trained on the corpus of the internet. So having actually a breadth of knowledge allows you to draw upon corners of the knowledge of the AI in ways that other people can't. So I do always encourage people to try and broaden their knowledge base.
Yeah, the liberal arts, the history,
Exactly.
the things that were not as commercially recognized as valuable for the last few decades.
Exactly.
Get out of that investment banking, corporate finance. Here's a reason to go back into creative.
The classics, yeah. Go on do the classics.
Daniel, when you look at the kind of to wrap us up here, the main issue around long-term impact on society, you speak about quite a bit. What's your most gracious interpretation of the future that AI is going to create for us? And then take us the other way. What are the things what are the safety and ethical concerns that keep you up at night?
I'd rather end on a high. So let me flip it around. Okay. So I think that, I think in the next 5 years, we're going to see a Cambrian explosion of new innovations. These tools will give people the ability to create new innovations, to build companies in ways that we've never imagined. I think that's very exciting. I think it will displace and disrupt jobs, but I don't think it will create mass technological employment. The beyond 5 years, as I said, nobody knows what they're talking about. And the fact is that I don't think anybody can predict the future, but we can create the future. The future is within our gift. And so one of the reasons why I do these podcasts and other talks is because I want to try and empower people that they have the ability to make the future. Now, I guess the one extreme of the argument is that the capitalistic model to reduce costs, increase profits means that when we can free up whole jobs, we probably will, or we won't hire. And if that happens very quickly, our economies might not be able to rebalance, and it could lead to social unrest. And I actually do think we need to lean into that problem. I think that UBI, 4-day working week, whatever, there are mechanisms we might need to put in place to mitigate the risks of that issue. That said, the alternative view is that if you are using these technologies to remove friction, the idea, I guess, is that you can reduce the cost of goods down to almost zero. So you can remove so much friction from the creation of food, education, transport, energy. They become essentially abundant. And so, I often say to people, look, people say, Daniel, what would I do if I didn't have a job? A job defines who I am as a human being. I know lots of people who don't have jobs. I sold my company. I don't ever have to work again in my life. I'm working harder now than I've ever worked. Most of the people I know that don't have jobs they're not sitting at home bored and depressed. They're usually using their time to contribute somehow to humanity. Now, we know there are people that overconsume. If you want a gold-plated Lamborghini, you probably also need a therapist. But most of the people I know that have reached some level of economic freedom, they are having more stuff doesn't make them happy. It's how they contribute to humanity. And when I ask audiences, what would you do if you didn't have to do paid work and everything was free? People say the same thing, which is they'll play golf, they'll indulge in their hobbies, they'll spend time with their friends and family, they'll travel. And if you keep pushing people hard enough, they say the same thing, which is they want to use their time to contribute somehow to humanity and make the world a little bit better. And I think we were all born, unfortunately, into economic constraints preventing us from doing that. And I guess the promise of AI is we can create a world that is not a utopia. I don't think anybody would agree on what a utopia is, but there's a concept called a protopia, which is a system that is getting better. And I think that system is a system where people are becoming economically free and they're choosing to use that economic freedom to use technology or whatever to build innovations that enable other people to become economically free. And that is the world that I actually want to create. And that relies on unlocking human creativity, which is why I joined WPP.
Yeah, I've heard you say systems able to adapt to an ever-changing world. When we have that as a supportive foundation of human society, it's going to be very different for the next generations.
It is, and actually, one of the reasons why I started Consium, this company interested in building safe, conscious AIs, is because I think we're actually over the next decade going to have to figure out how to coexist also with machines, which is again also an exciting paradigm.
Well, Dan,
and one thing I just want to say, if we're closing, is humans are remarkably adaptive. We are perhaps the most adaptive species on this planet, and therefore, arguably, the most intelligent. Whatever comes over the next 5-10 years. I have faith that the humans will adapt in ways that are going to be remarkable.
Change keeps us alive. If we knew we were going golfing and hitting a hole in one every single time, we wouldn't go golfing.
Exactly.
So, Daniel, thank you for giving us some insights into what's important priorities given this new AI world. Thank you for being an evangelist and picking up the megaphone and getting the message out. If someone is interested in supporting you, working with you in regards to deploying of change agents across their organizations, how do they enter your funnel? How do they get in touch? What's that look like?
Message me on LinkedIn. Email me, daniel@satalia.com or daniel.hulme@wpp.com. Really happy to engage.
Appreciate you, Daniel. Thank you so much for the time.
Thanks, Peter.